And welcome to Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. My name is Andrew Murata, host of the show, and we are live here with Dan Spainhour, and we are live here with our LIU leadership class. We have a number of student leaders from the LIU leadership class that are going to join us. But Dan Spainhour, thank you so much for joining the program today.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to see you again, too. I know we stay in touch some through social media and everything, but it's good to see your smiling face there, Andrew.
Dan, it is always a pleasure to be with you. To our audience that's watching live, that's right. Hashtag Lead LIU is here. This is Coach Dan Spainhour. He is a teacher and educator, lifelong, as well as a personal friend of mine, and he's been nice enough to join us. I'm going to bring some of our leaders in here as well, and they are going to join us. And this is Alyssa Morella and Mara Costello from the Lead LIU class.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, good to see you.
And how this will work, everyone, we will rotate some, leaders from the LIU program in and out of the show. But we're here to talk to Dan. We read Leading Narratives as one of the books in our class, and as well as looked at another resource of Dan, the Coaching and Leadership Journal. So, Dan, before we get started talking specifically about the stories, what was it that got you going, putting these projects together, right? What was it that said, hey, I want to do this?
Yeah. Well, I've been in education since, 36 years, I guess. And so I have collected a lot of stories, collected a lot of quotes. And the very first thing I did was put together a pamphlet for athletes and their parents for recruiting scholarship information. And so I did that a long time ago, and I gave it out just free. And then people kept wanting to come and get it. And so we started selling it on the side and everything. So that's the very first pamphlet or book I put together. And then the next thing I did was follow up with a quote book. It's called A Season in Words. And that started selling to colleges and things like that. And all it was, just like this book here, is just a collection of stuff that I've collected through the years of coaching. I mean, I'm a stickler for trying to find things, the motivation and with leadership and things like that. So I just started collecting things, and then I would put them in the books. So like these stories aren't mine. I mean, some of them are, but I don't know where I heard them. So a lot of them are things that I just collected, and I would put them in files. And then as I'm getting more in my career, I've started collecting those files and putting them into a book and different things like that. As far as the journal, that's something I just had an idea to do. And I've been amazed at the reception that it's had, because we've gotten some really prominent people as subscribers. And I did it. And I remember I guess it's been about 10 years now, it took about 3 months to get the first subscriber. And I'm like, and I'm still writing them out, putting them out every month and everything. And when we got that first subscriber, I was like, oh, okay, now I've really got to do it. And since then it's taken off. And so I enjoy, and I think it makes me better as a leader to be able to do that every month. And so I'm writing the June journal today, and it's fun. It's you learn by reading. I think the quote is that not all readers are leaders, but all leaders are readers, or something like that. But anyway, I think you do have to read, and this makes me read, and it makes me a better leader, I think.
Yeah, and here's the May edition. Dan,
so you got it already.
I just got it.
How about that postal service? Yeah.
Yeah. But Dan was nice enough to offer the Education Leadership and Beyond listening audience a discount. So if you use the code Murata20, and the subscription information is on his website, the Coaching and Leadership Journal, the Leadership Publishing Team, you can find that information and But it's great. I'm looking forward to it. Like you said, all leaders do read, so I'm going to get going. But speaking of reading, again, we have two of our students from the educators from the LIU class here with Mara and Alyssa, and we read this book in class. So, ladies, I'm going to turn it over to you. Was there a story in there that you wanted to ask Dan about that motivated you, that touched your heart and really made you think a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I personally really enjoyed the Lessons from a Cracked Pot story. Was there a time when you shared that story with a group of people, and who was it? And I just really like that message of, like, you never know the effect that you're having on someone else.
Yeah, we use that with my basketball team a lot in terms of when at the beginning of the year, and even if we feel like a player is struggling with what their role is, because a lot of people want to, as parents in particular nowadays, particularly when a kid has been invested financially into training and different things like this, that they don't want to, they have a tough time accepting the role because they don't think that their role is being, glorified enough. And that's one of the reasons I like that story, is because you don't really know. Everybody has a role to play, and sometimes it looks like the one that is getting all the glory is not necessarily the one that's always getting the most everybody has a role to fill, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And that, I do use that. And a lot of times with these stories and stuff, when I'm talking to my team or if I'm talking in any type of leadership setting, I'll twist it a little bit, and I may not use the whole thing or anything else like that. But yeah, I think that's really good, because sometimes you can't judge a pot by its cover, I guess it is. So thank you for that.
Right, absolutely. It was a great story.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. That was actually one of my favorites too. I actually had that same question, but I'm gonna go to the frog, where the lesson was like, don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. I feel like this one, it really touched my heart, because within this class, I was very, again, not tech savvy. I was never on Twitter, never on this. So like, I feel like, when was the time that you pushed someone to step out that really, and then they flourished? Yeah,
I think as a coach or even as a leader, I think we're always wanting to do that, and it's easy, to try. We talk about not being comfortable and things like that. In order to succeed, you got to expand your horizons and everything else like that. But I think that's one of the big things with anything in terms of leadership, is to get people to see that there is a big ocean out there instead of just a small pond that you're in. And it's easy to stay in the small pond. It's easy to be a big fish in a small pond. And that's why I like that, is the frog sees that there's a whole nother world out there, and everybody. The other story that's related to that, I'll usually put these two together, is like a crab barrel. And so like a crab's trying to get out of the crab barrel, and all the other crabs are trying to pull him back down. And so if you're the frog trying to get out, or you're the crab trying to get out, you got to be able to get through all the mess at the bottom and the people pulling you back. And so I use those two together a lot of times when I'm talking to my team. So thanks for that as well.
Thank you.
All right. So my question, it's kind of interesting how it's been leading up to mine. I like the What Every Teen Needs story. It's like a really super short story, but it's talking about how, the person who can play the best and knows all the rules and is always boasting that they're the greatest is usually the one that's outside of the game in the stands. Yeah. So it's just kind of funny to think about how it's the same thing. It's like, if that story is paired with the frog, right? So there's always going to be those people existing, and just remember, that they will exist. And so I just
and completely agree. And the more that you go up the leadership ladder, and the more people that you're responsible for and everything else like that, the more visible you become, the easier it is to get darts thrown at you and people criticize you and everything else like that. I do think as a leader, it's important not to throw all criticism into the same bunch, because if we're just surrounded by yes people, we may not be always getting the best advice, which I think we could see that all the way up the political lines sometimes without getting political. But I think you do have to have to be aware of some criticism, but I think you need to be aware of where it's coming from. I think if you're not, I don't think you should take criticism from people you shouldn't take it. You wouldn't take advice from. And so I think as a coach or as a leader or anything else like that, we do have to be aware that no matter what if we're willing to put ourselves out there, then there are going to be people who think they know better and think they're going to tell us what to do and everything else like that. And sometimes we have to listen, but we have to be aware of where it's coming from too. So thank you.
Yeah, and I did kind of have a separate question besides the stories. Are there any stories that you find, especially now with like everything that's going on, like are there any stories specifically in the book that for like my class and I, like we're, we might be rethinking our choices here about leadership in a time of chaos. But are there any stories there that could like help inspire people or keep them going during?
Yeah, I think probably one would be the lumberjack, where the lumberjack's out and he's just constantly, he goes out at the beginning, he cuts a lot of wood and he cuts. And then as the days go on, his output goes down and because he never takes time to sharpen his axe. So if there's a little bit that can come from this time, it does give us an opportunity to sharpen our axes. In other words, we can use this time instead of, and so many people are out at work and everything else like that. It's easy to group it all together. But those of us who are allowed to, we can use this time to sharpen our skills. And there's a lot of time now, and it's easy to. We were talking about it off camera there a little bit ago, how quickly the days are going by. But if we can use this time to sharpen our leadership skills, read more. Look at some different things, look at some different possibilities, listen to some more podcasts or anything else that we didn't normally have time for. Then we're sharpening our skills, and then we'll come back, and I think we'll be a better leader because of that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was Christine Maraglia. She's a teacher.
Hi, Christine.
New York. Guys, make sure you introduce yourself. Dan's a Southerner down there. You might not know all of you Yankees, but we do want you to introduce yourself. They're a great group of educators, and we also, Dan,
see that
watching live here. So if the rest of the class does have a question, certainly you can put that up there. But their cohort mates are watching. But Ed, I'll turn it over to you. Ed, don't forget to introduce yourself.
All right, hey Dan, Ed Killenberger from Goshen. How you doing?
Hey Ed, great, good to see you.
And congratulations on an awesome year, like I mentioned before, and a great career, I would say.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Really good stuff. I'm a coach, and I've actually, this year, I was a head coach of 2 programs for a while, wrestling and football. And this year I stepped down to actually watch my son. He's going to be a senior at another school.
Okay.
And, to watch him play. So I stepped down as a head coach, and I can relate to a lot of things that you talk about. And in the book, I tell you what, that story that really got me was the Coach K hangs up story. And when he has a star player and calls him up and he says, hey, how if you see the next conference player of the year next year, and he said, and he's hung up on him. I mean, and it's how many times have we seen athletes with talent and kids with talent, and they just don't believe in themselves. And, the whole belief thing is, with me resides, because if you believe in anything and truly believe in it, it will happen. So that story really, stuck with me.
I think that's so true. And it's we as motivators, coaches, leaders, what have you, I mean, we have to try to ignite fire and motivate people and things like that. But if the fire's not burning from within, it doesn't matter how many matches we light, it's got to come from within. So we have to try to find a way to get them to believe in themselves first. And one of the things that with today's society, especially for the younger players and things like that, I mean, back in the day, you'd have your group of fans at a game, and that would be it. Well, now, whatever game you're on, like we played in the conference tournament, and one of my kids hit a last second shot, and the thing went ESPN viral because somebody filmed it. So now thousands, millions of people saw it. you know? And so kids are afraid to make mistakes because of the perception or the fact that everything's out there now. And so we have to guide them through that now more than ever. And the biggest thing, I think, is to get them to believe in themselves from the beginning. Before you can hang up on a kid nowadays, even a Coach K in the world of, they've got to believe that you believe that they've got your best interest in heart and that you love them and everything else that goes along with that. And but every kid's got their own buttons to push, but we do have to get them to believe in themselves. We got to get them to believe, to take chances, to put themselves out there and not to be afraid to fail, and because we're in a society where we make fun of failures as opposed to realizing that failure is part of the process. So I agree with you, Coach. And good for you for coaching a couple of sports. Good for you.
Yeah, it's you know the deal.
I know the deal. I do.
You do.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Teresa.
Hi, everybody. My name's Teresa Murphy. I'm a teacher down in East Remco in Rockland County. It's a pleasure to meet you. And I'm sure I do want to let you know that any athlete that has Ed as a coach is a very lucky athlete as well. So it's been a pleasure getting to know him too.
I'm sure. Yeah, I can tell.
I actually wanted to share with you right before this all went down. My district was one of the first to go under quarantine because there were students that were infected. So we've been out, I think, since March 5th.
Wow.
And my principal, even though my internship hours were over a long time ago, I don't think they got the memo. So she's still, which was good because it's good to play that active role still. But you also get a lot of backlash from the negative staff members. But she had asked me to run the faculty meetings because she was going out for surgery. So I think it was March 3rd, I had to do the faculty meeting, and I had a lot of backlash, and it almost made me go to another administrator and say, you know what, I don't really feel comfortable doing this today. And, one of the stories, one of the roles in my presentation was being positive, staying positive and being a positive role model in order to motivate students. And I put a slide in there about stories from the cracked pot. And I gave you credit for it. And I almost got to the point in the presentation because I could just feel the vibes. I'm like, I don't know, maybe you guys don't want to hear the story. I was kind of knocking myself down. But then I went ahead and I read the story, and I got feedback from so many staff members that I normally wouldn't get feedback, telling me how it was such a great story and how, they asked me where I learned it from and where they could get a copy of it. And I just wanted to share it with you that you inspired, my colleagues. Yeah, and I think that during this time as well, while we're all trying to figure out what to do, that's a great story to lend itself. There's always many pieces to this pot. We all have to find out where we can fit into it. So I just want to say thank you for that. And I'm gonna remember that always.
That makes me feel good. Thank you. And
thank you.
Control the controllables, right? So good for you. Thank you very much for sharing that. Yeah.
That's a great story, Teresa. And Dan, I'll jump in again. So many great stories for so many different situations. And I'd like to take a moment just to read one. And this is the pencil. And
yeah, you like that one.
I shared this with my staff this week too, because so many people are going through so many different things. And, so real quick, right? It's the pencil. A long time ago, a master pencil maker was preparing to put a very important pencil into this beautiful handcrafted box. But before doing so, he took the pencil aside to give it some words of encouragement. He said, listen, pencil, there are 5 things that you really need to know. And if you could remember these 5 things, you are going to become the best pencil that you could possibly be. You are going to have a huge impact on the world. First, he said, you have to be able to do a lot of great things, but only if you allow yourself to be held in someone else's hands. Second, sharpening is going to be very painful, but it's vital if you want to be a great pencil. Third, because you have an eraser, you'll be able to correct most of your mistakes. But honestly, there are going to be some mistakes that are going to be harder to erase than others. 4, you may not look like a great pencil on the outside, or you may or may not look like a great pencil on the outside. But remember, it's what's on the inside that's most important. In fact, it's the inside of you that's the most important of all. And fifth, whatever surface it is that you write on, whether it's soft or hard, rough or not, you've got to leave your mark. So just keep on writing. Dan, tell me a little bit about, where you got this and what made you put this story in there. I think it's great for so many scenarios.
Yeah, and that's the thing about, I think all the stories, you can use them for different, and like I said, a lot of them I put my little, what I thought the meaning was at the bottom, but it could be anything. And where the stories came from, I've 30 some years of coaching. And at the beginning of the book, I talked about, I used to work the Duke basketball camp, and this was way before Coach K became such a big thing. And we would sit around and have pizza night on the last night, and he would tell stories. And he mentioned at one point, how important it is to get his players, to get people to buy into your story. He was constantly telling stories about a train leaving the station, this type of stuff. And I always remembered that as well. So whenever I heard anything, and then a lot of these came before the internet, and I had a book of different things and quote books and things like that these would come in. And I think it was called Successories, was a thing that I subscribed to back then. It was a printed book, and I'd tear them out and put it all into my files. And so I wish I could properly tell where that came from, but I don't know. But I think that I like the part of, the thing we try to say about leaving your mark on something. And sometimes that mark can be on a bigger thing and then it's something else, and like, whether it's a small school in North Carolina, a big school in New York, or a big Division I school, and that's something I'm going through. I was on the phone yesterday with a recruiter for one of my players, and it was a junior college versus a D3, and the kid wants to go at a higher level. And I didn't use the pencil store, but now I should have, because the kid could go leave his mark at the junior college if he'll just go in and look at it that way, as opposed to thinking that he's got to be at the highest level and maybe not leave a mark there. So yeah, that's the reason that's a really good story. And I know you like that, Andrew, because you've used that before. So good for you.
And I like the story, Dan, what you just said with the go to a junior college. Yeah. And it might better suit them, rather than go to like you said before, with the big fish in the little pond, and go do that, get better, build your confidence up.
That's right.
You might jump into the bigger D1 college and it might not work out too well for you, because
that's right.
Playing field,
That's right. And so many, this, Coach, but so many, and it's a lot of it's the people that's around the kids now, that the parents, not necessarily parents, but there's so much noise in these kids' ears that a lot of times they feel like they're a failure if they don't reach a certain level. Whereas the purpose of athletics, education as well, should be teaching these kids what's the best thing, making them better people. If you can go be a part of a program, whether it's junior college, D3, wherever it is, and you're learning the right skills, then it's going to make you a better person down the road. We get caught up way too much in what level, as opposed to what's the best fit, or where's the best place where you leave your mark in terms of the pencil. So exactly right.
Yeah, I coach youth football, and I find that parents have such a harsh reality. I feel like they think that their kid needs to be the all-star, and God forbid you put them in a different position than their parents want. They throw.
And one of the things you're probably seeing with youth football, good for you, Coach. And one of the things is, there's so many people that are now invested in the kids, and that the parents are investing in as well, in terms of financial investment as well. And I tell people, don't ask an insurance agent if you need more insurance. Don't ask a barber if you need haircut. And don't ask a trainer if a kid can play Division I. Because if the trainer tells the parent that, well, he's not going to be, or she's not going to be a Division I athlete, now they stop paying them. Usually the answer is, well, if you put enough work in, if he just works hard enough, and they work hard enough, and they do this long enough, then they will be. And so now they start not getting the return on their investment. This is what I've seen happen in the last 5 to 10 years in coaching. And it happens in the youth sports. They think that everything is a stepping stone to try to get to the Division I level, as opposed to enjoying the moment of just playing. And that's something else that may come from this step back. We were out walking. My wife and I were out walking yesterday, in a park here, keeping our social distancing, but the place was full. And she said, where is it? Why is everybody coming from? And the reason is nobody's hanging out at the youth soccer game, and nobody's out there. They're doing different things, whereas all those kids would have been out someplace else. So maybe there could be some benefits from this, because, I could go on and on, but we've lost what the real meaning of youth sports should be in a lot of cases. But if we get coaches like yourself, or people that understand it, educators who see that there's a bigger purpose behind this than just trying to constantly get to the next level, then then we're teaching them something. So
I agree.
Yeah.
Christine, did you have another question? And these are great questions, and/or our audience that's watching. Was there a story that resonated with you? Again, we're talking to Dan Spainhour, the author and writer from Leading Narratives. Christine, was there another one that jumped out for you?
No, I was just now on this thought of, because I teach high school technology, so I get the gamut of student athletes or a student with certain expectations. So I'm just kind of still contemplating what you're saying about this step back kind of changed a lot of what everyone thought they knew and things like that. So I just kind of gotten a path of all my senior athletes who didn't get their baseball or lacrosse or those seasons. And now I actually have a few students that have committed baseball scholarships. And so I actually am going to use one of the pencil story actually for one of them, because I haven't had a lot of contact with one of them. And I wrote them a message saying, they're still going to look at your grades, and you got to stay motivated. And I know this isn't your senior season, but it's now I'm thinking about him. So I just appreciate
I think it's a great time to teach kids, athletes, or anybody, that sports is not what you are, it's what you do. And what you are is your character. And so, because sports can be taken away from you at any moment, which this is a great teaching lesson for that. So all these kids that were going to play their spring season and stuff because they are a baseball player or they are a soccer player or whatever. No, you're really not. You're a person who needs to be getting everything taken care of, and you happen to play baseball, and that's what you do. So, it's a great time to teach them that sports are what you do. It's not what you are. But we've pushed that really hard for the past 10 to 15 years that you are, and there's only a 1% that are really elite athletes that they play it their whole career, and that's their profession. So we need to start saying that's what you do and everything else. So I agree with you. I hear you on that.
That's great.
Thanks, Chris. Alyssa, did you have one that resonated with you?
I had a lot that resonated with me. I was just wondering though, which story is your favorite to tell? Just out of curiosity, what's your go-to favorite story?
Don't say the pickle slicer.
No, or the bank, the old lady with the bank and stuff.
Square ball.
Yeah, the square ball. I do like the. I said it a little bit earlier. I do like the lumberjack one because I've always. Two of my favorite quotes are Abraham Lincoln. I think it was, if I had 8 hours to cut down a tree, I'd spend 6 sharpening my axe. And I think it was John F. Kennedy that said the time to fix the roof is when the sun is shining. And so taking the time to take care of the little things as opposed to just jumping in and not taking care of yourself. And that's something that's as I've been in this longer, I have a saying, don't take it out on the coach, don't take it out on the principal, don't take it out on the teacher, because at the end of the day, we're the ones we got to take care of ourselves. And sometimes we just get going so hard because we're trying to do get output, that we don't take time to rejuvenate ourselves and sharpen our own skills and things like that. So that's a lot of times, I guess that would be my go-to.
Your go-to, yeah. I really enjoyed the husband store. That one.
Well, he's going up the steps.
Going, and then you have no more options, and it just made me that I was thinking about it, in a leader setting or a school setting. Sometimes you're always looking for this next great thing, but then you always just, let's go to the next step. Let's go to the next step. And it just made me think about sometimes just what you have is right in front of you, and like what can you do with what you have.
That's very true. That's very true.
I really enjoyed that. That was really good.
I appreciate that. That's true. That's good. Good. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
you.
How about you, Terry? Any last stories? We're going to wrap up with Dan shortly. And again, the rest of our classmates are watching live and appreciate their comments. Terry, was there another story that jumped out for you?
I just want to say there were a bunch of stories that resonated with me as well. Unfortunately, my book is quarantined, so I don't have it with me. All of my stuff is back in school. But I did want to ask you, do you have any? Are you planning on writing a book, that addresses the current times that we're in? Do you have any narratives that are in mind right now, or something you're working on?
Not right now. My plan is to spend a little more time with the journal and try to see where it goes with that. And then I do have some book ideas, which it's a little bit toward this, but I'm not sure yet, but that's a good idea. So thanks. Yeah.
And then one more question. Do you have any stories or narratives that you think would help motivate either students or teachers during this time? The pencil is definitely a great one, so I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, steal that. Yeah.
You know what? And Dan,
I'll give you credit though.
And Dan, I'll jump in. I also shared with my students about check your work, right?
Yeah.
And the story
the kid calling.
Go ahead. You tell.
Yeah, where the kid calls and the from a shop, I guess, and overhear them calling. They're calling, and how's the work? Here, I'll do it cheaper or something like that. And they said no, that they're happy with it. And he was really pretending to be somebody else and checking to see what the person he was working for said for him. Yeah, I think that's really good. That's good as well. And I think no one really knows, because we've heard the word unprecedented probably more than the last month than we ever have. But it really is. No one knows, and leaders don't know, and no one knows. But I do think it's a time to reflect as to, that there is a bigger picture in terms of what you're trying to do and things like that. Sometimes we think we got everything figured out, and it's a good time to learn how to control the controllables. Like what is it that we can control? We can control ourselves and control what. And then I think that's where we are. But we'll look back on this. I heard someone say this is a great time to encourage students to keep journals, because 10 to 15 years from now, this is history being made, and you can look back, and these kids and everybody that can get their input, that might be something that history's being made, and it's being made in all different directions by different leaders and everything else like that. But the people who's losing their high school year, what a great time to keep journals, as opposed to, and see what's going to happen 10 years from now and when they look back on that. So, yeah.
And Teresa, I know you guys don't have this is the newest journal here. And Dan, there's probably 5 or 6 articles in here dealing with the corona and different aspects, including, different opinions about the cancellations of spring sports. So Dan's stuff is very current, and he does provide, I think it's just great. Ed, we got time for one more. I don't want to put you on the spot, and again, I know you and I talked about some of the off-color stories in here too, and there's a lot of humorous ones. One last story, Ed, that resonated with you?
Well, I mean, listen, the email story was, as I mentioned before, I mean, the email story is my favorite story in the book. I mean, I can relate to the Bear Bryant one you put in there and the Coach K one, but the email story, with the, it's getting hot down. I mean, it's awesome.
And the white fate. So that,
right, with the pastor, and oh my gosh, it was great. So,
and hey, that is important. Make sure we know who we email, and make sure that we know. Don't assume that somebody knows what we're talking about. Right?
Never assume. That's a big word I always use. Never assume.
That's right. We know what it does to you and me, right?
Yes, sir. But yeah, thanks for that, man. It's an awesome book, and I've been really looking forward to talking to you. Actually, being a coach and
we'll have to stay in touch.
Yeah, we will stay in touch. I'm
Yeah.
very big in the AFERD, the athletic organization in phys ed here in New York, and we have a conference every year. And I think I might throw your name in the hat to be a keynote speaker. I mean, we had Dave here, and I think it would be awesome for you to come up and tell some of the stories on the stage. That'd be awesome.
I'd love to do that. Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I'd love to do that. We will stay in touch. We'll make sure that's a great thing about social media. That's one of the positives.
Definitely. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
And if we need a
thanks for everybody. Hey, Andrew, you got a great class, it looks like.
We have a great professor too.
Yeah.
If we need a translator from the southern twang to the northern, I can translate. Ed.
Yeah, mine's not too bad, is it?
You'll jump in there, huh?
So, guys, this was Dan Spainhour, and again, you met the coach today. You met the author. You met the educator. Dan has a tremendous family down there in the huge metropolis of King, North Carolina. I did want to shout out his parents, Diane and Ken Spainhour. They're the real leaders, and certainly have taught me so much. And I know Dan, and so I wish his parents good health. They opened their home to me so many years ago, and our friendship. So Dan is retiring. Dan's retiring from coaching.
Evolving.
Yeah.
Evolving.
From teaching. It's evolving.
Yeah.
But we wish you the best, Dan. This was fantastic. Any last parting words, Dan?
We need leaders. We need professional people who are willing to follow their instincts and make the right decision as opposed to what they think is the popular decision, because a lot of times I think leaders we get caught thinking that how's our decision going to look on social media and everything. So continue the course, keep rolling, and keep following your gut, because we do need people like you. The profession, heck, the whole world needs it. So good for you.
Well, Dan,
Thank you.
Thanks for that message. And again, the pencil, you said keep writing, and that's something that Dan has motivated me, that keep rolling mentality. So we'll end on that note. This is the Lead LIU class, the great group. We appreciate you guys being on. And Dan, thank you for the book. Again, this is Dan Spainhour. Here's his book. And again, check out the leadershippublishingteam.com. This is his journal. I just got mine today. It's a fantastic resource. There is a discount code Marada20 in there for a 20% discount. Dan, stay on the line, and
okay.
Students, stay on the line for a minute, but we're going to sign off live here on Education Leadership Beyond. Dan, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone. Be well, and we will be back next week. Thank you.